Welcome to the Synthesis of Yoga, the book that changed my life. For those who are new, we are studying Aurobindo's book, The Synthesis of Yoga, the book that distilled Indic yogic traditions and took the essence and gave us the integral yoga, a yoga of the future evolution of our species, yoga of evolutionary transformation. Now, we have reached the 7th chapter of part 1. This chapter is called Standards of Conduct and Spiritual Freedom. And this part is called Yoga of Divine Works. There is description having a link to this chapter, and we are reading line by line to enter into the consciousness of Sri Aurobindo, his yogic way of seeing things, and internalize that vision, that consciousness. Very act of reading is our sadhana. So welcome to the Synthesis of Yoga. In our last episode, which was the 100th, very beautiful number, in that we saw that we have to dissolve the ego and merge with the divine consciousness and ascend into supramental consciousness. Only that can bring together the discords, the conflicts of our lower being, the mental, vital, physical nature, individually and collectively. And when we do that, there is a greater divine consciousness that works through the individual, an individual who is universalized, no more bound within the tiny framework of the body. Your mind is universalized, life energy is universalized, even the physicality is universalized. In that, supermind acts and it has its flow and ananda of divine consciousness. And it is not bound by any moral or ethical constructs. It acts from another level of our being. Now we move deeper into this. This will be our last episode of this chapter. This episode is 101. We are starting with paragraph 30. You will find the link in the description. Kindly follow the text so that we can enjoy his vision, his rhythm of writing, nuanced clarity that he brings. The perfect supramental action will not follow any single principle or limited rule. Any single principle. We have principles of the mind and its will. We have principles of vital energy and its love and various movements. And we have principles of body, matter. Each part and layer of our being has its own principle. And supramental action doesn't follow any one principle. It follows everything simultaneously, nor does it follow any limited rule. Our mind comes up with rules, whereas supramental action doesn't work through rules nor any limited one principle. The perfect supramental action will not follow any single principle or limited rule. It is not likely to satisfy the standard either of the individual egoist or of any organized group mind. So every individual has their own specific set of standards. Individual believe this is the right thing to do. So does an organized group and their group mind having certain notions about what is the right standard of conduct. Whereas supermind will not follow neither individuals nor group minds standards. So it is not likely to satisfy the standard either of the individual egoist or of any organized group mind. Because we do have very strongly ingrained notions about what is the right thing to do, what is the pious action, what is the noble way of doing things. These are all very much ingrained, culturally conditioned, and the supramental action is not likely to satisfy the standards set by individual egoist or the group mind. It will conform to the demand neither of the positive practical man of the world nor the formal moralist, nor the patriot, nor of the sentimental philanthropist, nor of the idealizing philosopher. We have here a series of types, each one relying on a particular part of being and responding to the world and its complexity, dealing with it in its own way. Let's take idealizing philosopher. He is operating from the pure mind in its abstractions of idealism, usually out of touch with ground realities and practicalities of life. So we have this usage called ivory tower philosopher, because they tend to be living in their abstractions without having an understanding of ground reality. Then we have sentimental philanthropist. That's another category of people whose heart is moved by seeing whether it is poverty or some or other challenges of the marginalized people. And action is born out of your emotional affinity and empathy with the underprivileged, with the marginalized, with those who are suffering. That is the sentimental philanthropist. Then we have the patriot. Patriots are identified with the nation, particular culture, and its greatness. Make America great again, make India great again, make Russia great again. And this identifications with the particular culture, its own greatness, the patriot who want to serve that, want to give, and corresponding codes of conduct, standards of conduct that comes. That's a third category. Then we have the fourth category, that is formal moralist, usually the religious type, who will be claiming Buddha says so, Christ says so, Muhammad says so, some or other yogi says so, and create their moral standards of conduct and expect everyone to follow that and believe that if you follow, everything will be good for you. And that's the formal moralist. Then we have positive practical man. Look at our business people, very, very practical. Any action, when they are looking at action, it is an investment. Is it bringing the right returns? Is it sustainable financially? That's the primary reference point. When they say, is this practical? It means whether it is financially sustainable. So there are all kinds of people who are having their notions, whereas the supramental action is not likely to conform to, or will not conform to, the demands of these 5 different types of people. So it will not conform to the demand, it will conform to the demand neither of the positive practical man of the world, nor of the formal moralist, nor of the patriot, nor of the sentimental philanthropist, nor of the idealizing philosopher. Each one of them has a grain of truth, but not the whole truth. Whereas the supramental action comes from a truth consciousness that is integral. It includes all, rejects none, but brings out their essential divine truth. Proceed by a spontaneous outflowing from the summits in the totality of an illumined and uplifted being, will, and knowledge. The totality of an illumined and uplifted. Illumination happens with the higher consciousness and its light enters our mind, life, body. So there is an illumination and an upliftment of being, will and knowledge, mental being, vital being, physical being. Everything gets uplifted. So it will proceed by a spontaneous outflowing. It is spontaneous outflowing from the summits in the totality of an illumined and uplifted being, will and knowledge, and not by the selected, calculated, and standardized action, which is all that intellectual reason or ethical will can achieve. So our mind, intellectual reason, when it organizes people or a society, there is such a level of complexity. Human mind cannot handle that full complexity and infinite variation. So what it does is it finds patterns and then standardize this pattern. And there are always exceptions to any standardized pattern. But it will eliminate all the exceptions, standardize it, define standard operating procedures, conduct standards of conduct, and try to fit all life into its templates. And that's a standardized operational procedure which mind creates because of its limited comprehension and limited capacity to handle the infinite variety. So it has to reduce the complexity into simple formulas and fit the society with the people, fit life, fit spirit into these molds. And that is the reason why societies get mechanized. And we do refer to things like government machinery, corporate machinery. Because the way we organize the society is from the mind and its structured way of looking at things. And the mind itself is a logical engine, a machine. And now we are transferring it into artificial intelligence, which is a master pattern recognizer. And though it looks like very, very flexible, behind it is patternizing tendency, which eliminates all the variations. And this standardized action will not be the nature of supramental action. So it will proceed by a spontaneous outflowing from the summits in the totality of an illumined and uplifted being, will and knowledge, and not by the selected, calculated, and standardized action, which is all that the intellectual reason or ethical will can achieve. So the standardized perfection is what mind will drive individuals and society towards. First, establishing standardization within a nation. Then when the nations come together, we start creating global standards of conduct, and eventually creating a standardized, mechanized global state. And that potentially will wipe out all the cultural diversity, infinite variations, because it cannot handle. And this is the danger Sri Aurobindo warned very early on, because when we try to organize human civilization globally, this is the temptation, because we are living in the mental consciousness. It has to reduce the complexity into standardized templates and try to fit everyone into one or other box. Its sole aim will be the expression of the divine in us and the keeping together of the world and its progress towards the manifestation that is to be. So this supramental force, supramental light, and its action, its sole purpose or its aim will be expression of the divine in us. Within this materialized embodied being, there is a divine potentiality. And the supramental action is to bring that out into expression in this material nature. So supramental force alone can do it, and it is not looking at the material world neither as a dukkha, samsara, field of suffering, nor it as an illusion, Maya. It is looking at this world as a material condition in which there is a progressive manifestation of the divine. And supermind can integrally act through mind, life, and the body, and matter itself. Because it is the source of the entire creation. It is the dynamic force that is creating and sustaining everything in existence. So its sole aim will be the expression of the divine in us and the keeping together of the world. Keeping together of the world. We are operating from our mind. Mind is an agent of division. It cannot see the whole. It can only see parts. And when that part vision is its reference point, it cannot hold the whole of humanity nor the planetary life, because inherently it is incapable of that level of complexity. The keeping together of the world and its progress towards manifestation that is to be. So whereas supermind has that possibility of holding the whole things together and progressively manifesting the divine. This even will not be so much an aim and purpose as a spontaneous law of being and an intuitive determination of the action by the light of the divine truth and its automatic influence. When we look at our mind operates by setting goals. It has an aim, it has a purpose. Then it uses its intelligence to reach the goal. There is a mental conception about an aim, a purpose. Whereas supramental action will not be following it because it is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and simultaneously acting everywhere and in everything. And it will not be so much an aim and purpose as a spontaneous law of being. It is unfolding from its spontaneous law of being and its divine being spontaneously becoming in time and space. And an intuitive determination of the action by the light and the divine truth. So there is an intuitive determination. What to do, what not to do comes from a spontaneous, intuitive determination from the light of the divine truth and its automatic influence. This action is automatic. It is not by standardized structure, rule, setting the gap between purpose and where I am. It is the divine truth progressively expressing itself in the material, vital, mental mold and divinizing them. That's how it acts. It will proceed like the action of nature from a total will and knowledge behind her, but a will and knowledge enlightened in a conscious supreme nature and no longer obscure in this ignorant Prakriti. Prakriti and nature. Nature, Sri Aurobindo divides into two. There is higher nature and lower nature. The lower nature is what we refer as Prakriti. And higher nature is the divine Shakti, conscious. In between is what we refer as Maya. Maya is not Prakriti or Shakti, but our mental construct and illusion that mind creates. Mind is having its limited perception. There is a reality out there, but mind has a map of the reality. It is not the reality, but only a map of the reality. There is Himalayas, and then there are maps of the Himalayas. Map is not the Himalaya. So the map, that illusory construct, that is a mental map. That is Maya. Once that goes, then we are able to see the divine Shakti in her true splendor. Or we are trapped in the Prakriti, which is mechanical in nature. So in our evolution, we are moving from Prakriti to Shakti. And Shakti is the divine mother who guides, leads evolution and our transformation. So here, supramental action, it will proceed like the action of nature. Nature is simultaneously acting everywhere, from a bacteria to an entire galaxy. It is exactly the same nature, one nature, indivisible nature, simultaneously acting through all. It is the whole thing acting. It will proceed like the action of nature from a total will and knowledge behind her. There is a total will, not a partial will acting in one particle, one person, one small group. No, it is operating simultaneously everywhere. A total will and knowledge. It's a omnipresent knowledge behind her, but a will and knowledge enlightened in a conscious supreme nature. So this will and knowledge is enlightened in that supreme higher nature. That is the divine Shakti, the dynamic absolute who is the creative power. Aditi in the Vedic language, mother of all gods. It is her action, the conscious supreme nature, and no longer obscure in this ignorant Prakriti. Our material nature, even the layers of the vital and mental, they are all evolutionary emergence in ignorance, in inertia, emerging from the inconscient, bound by obscurity, struggling towards light. That is Prakriti. And this Prakriti will be illumined by the higher nature pouring into her. That will be the action of the supramental light and its force. It will be an action not bound by the dualities, but full and large in the Spirit's impartial joy of existence. Our mind works in duality of right and wrong. Our heart works in the duality of likes and dislikes. And our central vital operates with attractions and repulsions. And our senses works with the duality of pleasant and unpleasant. So all that will not be the nature, because the supramental is non-dual dynamic force. It is acting in its impartial joy of existence, Spirit's impartial joy of existence, where it sees everything having its right place in the right context, in the right proportion. So it will be an action not bound by dualities, but full and large in Spirit's impartial joy of existence. It's impartial. It works through all simultaneously. The happy and inspired movement of a divine power and wisdom guiding and impelling us will replace the perplexities and stumblings and the suffering and ignorant ego. So that inspired movement, a happy inspired movement of a divine power and wisdom. A divine power and wisdom is pouring into you. Your body is like a, mind is like a, life energy is like a vessel into which the greater light and force is pouring in. And that makes your movement, your thought, your speech, everything inspired. And that power is flowing through you, moves through you, and expresses through you. So it's a happy and inspired movement of a divine power and wisdom, guiding and impelling. It is not only guiding, it is also impelling. It's a moving force. Impelling us will replace the perplexities and stumblings of the suffering and ignorant ego. Our ego is the narrow little mold which suffers, it's ignorant, and it stumbles, and it is perplexed. So all that gets sorted out, cleaned up, enlarged, made wide, universalized. That's how the supramental light and force acts through you, not through rigid mental formulas, standards of conduct, nothing fixed, nothing mechanical, but a spontaneous flow of being coming from the divine Satchidananda. That's how it flows. If by some miracle of divine intervention, all mankind at once could be raised to this level, we should have something on earth like the golden age of the traditions, Satya Yuga, the age of truth or true existence. We do have in Indian tradition the cyclic progression of the society. And interestingly, in Indian tradition, We see the most ancient is the period as the Satya Yuga, the golden age, the age of truth when the divine consciousness is established. Then we lose it progressively. From Satya Yuga, it comes down to Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And we are currently supposedly in the Kali Yuga, transitioning into a new Satya Yuga that is emerging. That is how Indian tradition looks at the social evolution. And if humanity is lifted up into supramental consciousness by some divine miracle, an intervention, there will be potentially a Satya Yuga that will be unfolding, revealing itself on earth. Now, this is a very interesting point because Sri Aurobindo's work was one such intervention. In fact, Mother says about Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo represents not a teaching, not even a revelation, but a decisive action direct from the Supreme. It's really like action of the avatar. The divine manifest in the human form, intervenes in the human affairs and uplift the humanity into a new level of consciousness. That was the work he was involved in, of establishing the supramental consciousness on earth. And its consequences will be unfolding in the coming centuries. So it is not a teaching, it is not a revelation, it is a direct action. Both Mother and Sri Aurobindo, whom we consider as the dual avatars, who established on earth a new consciousness. And earth is undergoing a rapid transformation because that new consciousness has been established. And people across the world, whoever is receptive to it, will receive it and transcribe it in their own language. It doesn't matter what vocabulary you will be putting on it, but it will animate more and more people to recognize a greater truth that is calling you. So you surrender to that force, attune to that force, and that force will work through you. It will accelerate your individual and collective evolution, and that force is operationalized. So it's important to also recognize that while writing this, Sri Aurobindo is just hinting what was being done. If by some miracle of divine intervention, all mankind at once could be raised to this level, we would have something on earth like the golden age of the tradition, Satya Yuga, the age of truth or true existence, the age of truth. The supramental consciousness is also referred as the truth consciousness, where the totality of truth is manifest. And interestingly, Sri Aurobindo says, in the Satya Yuga, there is no Veda that is fixed, formulated into words. Veda was the living truth in the heart of the creature, a living Veda. That is moment to moment. Everyone knows their divine truth, self-organizing society, an egalitarian divine society. It is in the process of losing of that inner contact through Treta and Dwapara, Vedas get articulated. Then in the Treta Yuga, end of Treta Yuga, it is known as Vyasa organized and codified the Vedas. So Satya Yuga, there was no written or orally articulated and fixed Veda. It is moment to moment living Veda. Then slowly it become orally articulated and fixed mantras. Then gradually it get written. And now we have inherited the Vedas in a written form, what was originally a Vedic oral tradition. And beyond the oral tradition was the living Veda, where it was a moment-to-moment truth. Now we don't even know how to unpack the truth of the Vedas. And eventually we have to rediscover and come back to the divine truth that is moment to moment, not bound by any regulatory codes of conduct, no Manu Samhitas, no laws of Manu. All that were part of the period of human history where the truth was lost and it had codified itself into laws, regulations. whether it is of Manu, Confucius, Moses, whoever it is. These were periods where we were losing the truth, then we were casting into these standards of conduct. Now, if we are moving towards a new Satya Yuga, so if by some miracle of divine intervention, all mankind at once could be raised to this level, we should have something on earth like the golden age of the traditions, Satya Yuga, the age of truth or true existence. For the sign of the Satya Yuga is that the law is spontaneous and conscious in each creature and does its own work in a perfect harmony and freedom. So this is the indication of Satya Yuga. There will not be laws. It will be a divine harmony where each creature knows its truth, its position in the larger scheme of things, and it will work in harmony with the whole. So there is no question of conflict and suffering. So the sign of the Satya Yuga is that the law is spontaneous. It is a spontaneous law, not a written law, external law that is cast. Law is spontaneous and conscious in each creature and does its own works in a perfect harmony and freedom. Unity and universality. Unity and universality. Not separative division would be the foundation of the consciousness of the race. Human race, if it ascends to the supramental consciousness, it will be living in unity and universality. In unity, it experiences everything as one. I am in all are in me. There is a oneness of consciousness, a dynamic oneness in multiplicity, as well as a universality. It is embracing totality of life. All creatures, everything one. Unity and universality, not separative division, which is the characteristic consciousness and movement of the mind and mental ego. Not a separative division would be the foundation of consciousness of the race. Love would be absolute. Love would be absolute. Highest expression, deepest expression of life. Love. Equality would be consistent with hierarchy. Equality and hierarchy. And this is a problem with the modern man. We say we want equality. Equality automatically gets translated into hierarchy is bad, because hierarchy doesn't bring equality. Human mind cannot hold hierarchy and equality together. Similarly, love and justice may not go together. Freedom and discipline, it cannot hold together. Mind struggles with these dualities. It is unable to hold them together. Whereas in the divine consciousness, equality will be consistent with the hierarchy and perfect in difference. Differences are inevitable and natural. It is diversity on the ground of oneness, unity. That will be the law of nature. Absolute justice would be secured by the spontaneous action of the being in harmony with the truth of things and the truth of himself and others, and therefore sure of true and right result. So here is love, justice, everything finding its right place, because each individual is in harmony with the larger whole. Therefore, the right action unfolds in alignment with the truth of things. Truth of the individual, truth of the collectivity, truth of the moment, truth of the context. Everything gets spontaneously, naturally self-organized. We do have these days people dreaming of a self-organizing society. People coming together and self-organizing. Momentarily, here and there, we find small expressions of that self-organizing intelligence. But unless we arrive at a higher divine consciousness, this cannot manifest in large-scale, sustainable way across the planet. Right reason, no longer mental but supramental, would be satisfied not by the observation of artificial standards, but by the free automatic perception of right relations and their inevitable execution in act. So the reason itself, we are transcending reason, but is including reason. But this reason will not be of following standards of conduct, but an automatic perception of right relations and their inevitable execution in act. So when there is multiplicity, everything has to coordinate and synchronize and harmonize. Everything having its right place, right time, all that get automatically perceived, self-organized by this higher consciousness. So unity and universality, not separative division, would be the foundation of the consciousness of the race. Love would be absolute. Equality would be consistent with hierarchy and perfect indifference. Absolute justice would be secured by the spontaneous action of the being, in harmony with the truth of things and the truth of himself and others, and therefore sure of true and right result. Right reason, no longer mental but supramental, would be satisfied not by the observation of artificial standards, but by the free automatic perception of right relations and their inevitable execution in act. So living, spontaneous whole and parts coming together into a beautiful divine symphony. That will be the result towards which we need to aspire. And to do that, we need to access the supramental consciousness. It cannot be done as long as we live in mental consciousness and study some philosophy. No, it won't be helpful. It can give us pointers, but transformation, absolutely inevitable, unavoidable. Without it, such a future will be impossible. The quarrel between individual and society or disastrous struggle between one community and another could not exist. The cosmic consciousness embedded in embodied being would assure a harmonious diversity in oneness. A harmonious diversity in oneness. First, we have the conflict between individual and society. That will automatically get dissolved. Then one group against other. We see nations warring with each other, one group with other. One culture fighting with another culture, one idea fighting with another idea, inability to synchronize. All that will be resolved only if humanity learns to upgrade itself into the supramental consciousness. It will not be able to resolve the war and conflict that is plaguing humanity. It has plagued humanity for thousands of years. This cannot be resolved by living in the mental consciousness, because the very nature of the mind is narrow. It cannot perceive the totality of truth. It cannot live from the omniscience, omnipotence, and totality, other than universality, because it lives in the narrow ego. So when we open ourselves to the supramental consciousness, this becomes possibility where individual and society get resolved, the conflict is resolved, community and conflict, community with community conflict is resolved. We enter into a harmonious diversity in oneness. So oneness doesn't mean uniformity, but a profound diversity. And it is absolutely inevitable because evolution is moving from simple to more and more complex unity. So unity, if it becomes uniformity, then the diversity is gone, complexity is gone. It's a complex, more and more complex unity towards which we are moving. So human unity towards which we are moving globally, civilizationally, is of a unity in tremendous diversity, or rather a diversity on the foundation of unity. And that unity will be possible only if we learn to open ourselves to the supramental light and force and let it transform us, so that our individual being gets universalized into infinity. And on that ground, unity is established, and diversity can thrive. That's the kind of journey we are invited to undertake in this yoga. In the actual state of humanity, it is the individual who must climb to this height as a pioneer and precursor. You are listening to this podcast, and you're an individual, and you are in search because there is some truth knocking deep in your heart. Therefore, you are exploring, discovering, what can I do? Where do I find the right understanding? First is the understanding of what we are up to. Then begin your climb. Begin your transformation by opening to the divine light. And that is done by individual. Individual is the pioneer who is the protagonist of this journey, precursor. In the actual state of humanity, it is the individual who must climb to this height as a pioneer and a precursor. It's a climb into supramental consciousness and then establishing it here on earth. His isolation will necessarily give a determination and a form to his outward activities that must be quite other than those of a consciously divine collective action. So his isolation will necessarily give a determination and a form to his outward activities. There is outwardly visible form of action, and there are inner movement. His isolation will necessarily give a determination and a form to his outward activities that must be quite other than those of a consciously divine collective action. So there is a consciously divine collective action directly under the influence and action of the supramental force. That's different from an individual who is isolating himself into an isolated action. His isolation will necessarily give a determination and a form to his outward activities that must be quite other than those of a consciously divine collective action. The inner state, the root of his acts, will be the same. The inner state, the root of his acts, will be the same. But the acts themselves may well be very different from what they would be on an earth liberated from ignorance. Earth liberated from ignorance. Earth consciousness is bound by ignorance because life on earth emerged in the obscurity of matter. Life emerged in the material frame, mind emerged in the living matter, and it is obscure. In that context, there is one type of action, but when the earth is liberated from that ignorance, there will be a divinized earth. So the inner state, the root of his acts will be the same, but the acts themselves may well be different from what they would be on the earth liberated from ignorance. So there will be a difference in the action of the individual who is rooted in the divine consciousness. Nevertheless, his consciousness and divine mechanism of his conduct, if such a word can be used of so free a thing, would be such as has been described, free from that subjection to vital impurity and desire and wrong impulse which we call sin, unbound by that rule of prescribed moral formulas which we call virtue, spontaneously sure and pure and perfect in a greater consciousness than the mind's, governed in all its steps by the light and truth of the Spirit. So such an individual who is established in the divine consciousness will be free from the impurities of the vital nature, impurities of the mental nature, free from the restrictive formulas, moral, ethical formulations of the mind, and be acting spontaneously from that divine consciousness. Even in a world that is stumbling and striving, but this individual will be agent who brings that light. So nevertheless, his consciousness and the divine mechanism of his conduct, divine mechanism, if such a word can be used for free, so free a thing. He is using the word mechanism, at the same time he is saying it is so free. Calling it mechanism is in a way not entirely right word to use. The divine mechanism of his conduct, if such a word can be used for of so free a thing, would be such as been described, free from that subjection to vital impurity and desire, and wrong impulse, which we call sin, unbound by that rule of prescribed moral formulas, which we call virtue. So both virtue and sin will be, the individual who is establishing in the divine consciousness will be beyond virtue and sin, which our normal man, bound by morality in social codes of conduct, may not be able to grasp. Spontaneously sure and pure and perfect in a greater consciousness than the mind's. Spontaneously sure and pure and perfect in a greater consciousness than the mind's, governed in all its steps by the light and truth of the Spirit. That's how that individual would act in the world. But if a collectivity or group could be formed of those who had reached the supramental perfection, there indeed some divine creation could take place. So when such individuals come together, there is a possibility of a divine creation, a gnostic society. That will be the future ideal of a collectivity that is divinized. If a collectivity or group could be formed of those who had reached the supramental perfection, there indeed some divine creation could take shape. A new earth could descend, a new earth. Our current material body of earth will undergo a divine transformation. A new earth could descend. That could be a new heaven. He is using the word descending. There is a material earth. The same material earth has its subtle bodies in higher planes. That higher existence of the divine earth, that descends here into the material envelope, material body of earth. That's a new earth. A new earth could descend. That would be a new heaven, a heaven here on earth. A world of supramental light would be created here amidst the receding darkness of this terrestrial ignorance. There is a terrestrial ignorance. The material nature of this earth is bound by ignorance. That and its darkness will recede. It will be replaced by a progressive revelation of the descended supramental light and truth. And this is what Mother and Sri Aurobindo was working on, to establish that new consciousness here on earth, where they had themselves universalized their being, established in supramental consciousness, and brought it into the material body of earth consciousness. And Sri Aurobindo, Mother always referred to earth consciousness. It is not just human being and a society that is undergoing change. It is the earth consciousness that is shifting. It is the new earth that is descending into this material earth. A divine form of earth, divine consciousness of earth, descending here into the material earth. A new earth could descend. That would be a new heaven. A world of supramental light could be created here amidst the receding darkness of the terrestrial ignorance. So this is the journey we are into through integral yoga. This is the objective of integral yoga. There is a divinization, a life divine on earth that is envisioned by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Not only envisioned, they have given us the pathway. Not only given the pathway, they have also established the conditions for its manifestation. The new consciousness has been established. that is progressively unfolding, revealing itself through whoever is the receptive individual. They may speak different language, doesn't matter, because the force, the light, is already operationalized on earth. And that's what happened in 1956, the supramental manifestation on earth. That is the golden day in the history of Sri Aurobindo's ashram. And this work has been already done. It is quietly spreading across the planet. And we are privileged to have come in touch with Sri Aurobindo and Mother, and having known their work and at least developing some conscious mental understanding of what is happening, unlike millions of people who are confused and lost in the chaos that is unfolding on earth, because the old world is coming to an end and the new world is birthing, and there is a transitional chaos, and we can transition into the new when we know what is going on and we learn what it means to tune into this new consciousness that has been operationalized on earth. So with that, we come to the end of this chapter, Standards of Conduct and Spiritual Freedom. So we see the spiritual freedom can come only when we realize our spiritual core and ascend to the spiritual and supramental consciousness and embody it and universalize ourselves. There is absolute freedom and absolute law of the divine truth, and its light, its spontaneity, its ananda, its flow. Everything will be possible, and that's the invitation. Thank you, and please do share your insights, your journey. That will be of great value to others. It is through sharing we connect, we get to know each other. So, welcome to share. See you for the next episode. Thank you.